So welcome to Sensible Secondhand Classics on this 31 degree day in Yorkshire. Today I'm driving a 1987 Metro 1 litre City. And before you say you've had Metros on your channel before, well, as far as I'm concerned, there's always room for another one. So the Metro was launched in 1980, and this is the absolute bottom of the range for the year. It's a 1 litre City, not the X, just the City. Because it's a 5-door model, we do actually have a rear wiper, but we don't really have much else. We have no internally adjustable mirrors, we have no glove box, we have no grip for the handbrake. It's just a metal handbrake, and that's all you get. No rev counter, of course, no electric windows, no power steering, nothing at all. Just an awful lot of grin-inducing fun. Metro was only ever available with what's called the A+ engine. It's a development of the A series. The very early Metros had a low compression version of this engine, developing 41 horsepower for the 1 litre. Between 1980 and 1983, most 1.3 Metros had about 60 horsepower. That was increased to 63 horsepower a little bit later on. I've driven a 1.3 Metro before. It was a Vanden Plas, which had actually had about 85 horsepower. It had been chipped slightly, well, not really chipped, but tuned a little bit because it was on carbs. And I also driven another 1 litre, a much later one than this. In fact, I think it was an 89. It was a Mosaic, which just kind of gave you some fancy seats, didn't really give you much else, and some white wheel trims. This car's got about 45 horsepower. The sort of slightly later ones had about 47. With the 1.3s, the MG versions and the later manual Vanden Plas had 72 horsepower. And then the Metro Turbo, the MG Metro Turbo, that had about 93 horsepower. If you want to go around with the automatic Vanden Plas, that had 63 horsepower, but those had 63 horsepower, I should say, along with the kind of strings like the 1.3L. This car isn't actually badged as an Austin, hence I didn't introduce it as an Austin Metro, because by 1987 they decided that they were going to change the name of the company to the Rover Group from Austin Rover, and so the Austin badge cars just lost that badge entirely, and by 1988 the whole company, when it was bought by British Aerospace, was just known as the Rover Group. So this is just a Metro, and you won't see any Austin badges on it. One thing that's different about this Metro compared to the other ones that I filmed is the front end. They had this idea that they wanted to perhaps make people move up a few trims to get a better Metro, and so they just fitted these little sort of pods of these headlamps right the way through from 1980 up until 1992, when the last Metro van was made, to the lower spec models, and it makes the car look very, very different. Obviously with this Mark II Metro, the 5-door came in around the end of 1984. The physical shell of the car is different. Obviously this is an example that's not concours. There is a little bit of sort of rust treatment in here on there. The car has been painted at various points to varying degrees of success, but it looks overall, I think, pretty good. Because this is a 5-door City, I've actually got a rear wiper as well, and we've got a button we can press. The early ones didn't get a button at all. You had to sort of use the key for everything. For a car that's this small, and it is a small car, the boot's actually reasonably spacious. I'd say it's just under sort of 250 litres, and you can see the really, really simple way that the seats fold down. In this case, in one piece. Hopefully that won't come down on my head. You can see the incredibly kind of simple design of the tailgate, which doesn't actually properly incorporate the wiper motor, because there were quite a few available with no rear wiper. If we just lift up this floor, which is going to be easier if I use that. There's a little spare wheel under there. And of course it uses the 20W50 oil in here. Exactly the same for the gearbox too, because they are the same unit. If we look at the interior, this is the basic dashboard. We've got incredibly cheap looking seats, like, you know, absolute utter poverty, because we don't even have headrests. We don't actually have that many blank switches. We've only got a couple in here, mainly things like the front fog lamps, and for some reason somebody at Austin Rover decided, when they put in this facelifted dash in late '84, that they weren't going to use a wiper stalk that was different for the ones of the rear wiper. So the rear wiper control is here, not here, as it would be on something like, I don't know, sort of Maestro or something like that. Very, very simple. There's the fan speed just there. There's the heater control, that just directs the air in the correct position. You can hear it sort of working there. Little coin tray in here, as well as the choke. You actually get a cigarette lighter, which is posh, but what's not so posh, viewers, is the fact that we don't actually have a glove box at all. I think you can fit one, and I've seen Mr. Westby from Twin Cam do that. He also has a couple of Metros, as you know. Just says Metro, of course, there. No Austin badge on this one. And the incredibly low mileage of 31,000 miles. If you'd had an MG or something, you'd have a rev counter. We don't have that in here. We do have, though, is one of the most satisfying little headlight switches I know. So that would be a clock in a high spec car. That's the original radio. It hasn't got a tape deck because they decided you didn't need one, which is fair enough. There is the rear window, and 4-speed manual gearbox. You could get an automatic Metro, of course, but you couldn't get a 5-speed gearbox until the Rover Metro came out in 1990. There's that incredibly basic handbrake with no grip, and some door pockets, vinyl trimmed on the door cards, windy windows. You could get electric windows on the Mark II Metro if you went for the Van den Pla. You could get those, and wood door caps and other things. That would be my preference, probably, and a nice leather trimmed steering wheel. But this one, well, this is the absolute opposite end of the spectrum. Right, I think I'll try to get in the back for the amusement of you all. Right, viewers, just for you. I mean, I'm in. It's not the most room in here. My head is touching the roof. There's definitely more room in a Nova than there is in one of these Metros. You do have an incredibly good sort of view of what's going on in the front, though. That's one thing you get. You don't really get anything else. You've got rear seat belts in here because by 1987 they were required by law, but not all manufacturers actually fitted them the standard before that. Good old windy windows, little ashtray here. A bit more practical for families with children to get in and out as opposed to the 2 3-door Metros that I filmed so far. But yes, just wonderfully basic and charming, down to these little door locks. I think it's time to have a look at the A+ engine. It smells hot. There we go, little A plus engine, developing in this case 45 horsepower. Not really a lot to say. Transmission's right down there, so you can't see it on the side as you would on most front wheel drive cars with an end-on transmission. This car actually requires you to use a lead replacement sort of additive because it's before 1988 when they all had to be adjusted to run unleaded. So if you just want to be on the safe side, then you can use some of that. This car also runs on E5, which is just something to take into consideration as well. But yeah, still is Austin Rover Group, despite the fact that the Austin name is missing on the car. And it's still got rotating pulleys. Chain driven engine, so no need to worry about any cam belts, it's absolutely fine. But yeah, pretty easy to work on. There's not really anything sort of much that's going to scare any sort of home mechanic in here. And there's that all important brake servo, which means the brakes are fantastic. Right, I think we will go for another drive because that's part of the fun of these cars. Lloyd Vehicle Consulting stickers, t-shirts and mugs are available by clicking the link to the Google form in the video description below. One thing I adore about the A-Series Metros is the sound they make. Things which would have been just ridiculously old-fashioned when this car was made in 1987 are really, really appealing now. This bizarre sort of bus-like driving position, the whine of the gearbox, it's just completely addictive. The gearbox actually sits at the sump of the engine, so it shares the engine oil. There is no separate transmission fluid for this car at all. And the hydrogas suspension, which is connected side to side in this car later, and the K-Series Rover Metro was front to back, and just the characterful sound of the gear change. These do corner really well. We've got hydrogas displacers here rather than traditional kind of springs and shocks, and you can place this car so unbelievably accurately when you're driving. Just really, really lovely to drive. Not the most relaxing or anything like that, but if you're a very keen driver, then this is a really appealing little car. Just taking it round these bends, you've got not a huge amount of power to sort of actually kind of up most of speed, but what you do have is just beautiful handling, really, really well sorted. And just that engine note, it's just fantastic, even with 45 horsepower. I do apologise if there's a bit of a breeze. It is very, very warm today, hence the sunglasses and having the window open. The brakes are very, very good, to the extent that I'm not entirely sure that you 100% do need a brake servo in the Minis that were made around this time. They actually only fitted the brake servo from 1988. This is better to have one, and actually it stops really, really well. Ride's a bit sort of jiggly, but that's pretty normal for these, really. Just a whole lot of fun, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who, kind of after driving this, wants to buy a Metro Van den Plas. Let's now look at some Metro trim levels, and there are many of them. It's the base, the City X, the L, the HLE, HLS, those were quite early ones, Van Pla, my favourite of course, the MG 1300, the MG Turbo, the GTA. I don't really know why they marketed the GTA, and perhaps one of you would be able to say. Just pause there to let an enormous tractor past. So yeah, the MG 1300 and the GTA, they were very similar, only I think after 1988 those came out. So the Clubman, the City Special, and then a huge number of special editions. The Red Hot, the Jet Black, the Surf, the Mosaic, like the one I filmed at the beginning of the year, then the lovely Mayfair, the Clubman L, the 1275 Sport, the Studio 2, the Principles, the ARX, the Advantage, the Knightsbridge, the LE, the Sport, I think I mentioned the ARX, and the GS. That was kind of like Van Pla after the Van Pla name was discontinued. So viewers, the A-Series engine Metro, is this an example of a car that you should buy as a sensible second-hand classic for between £1,000 and £5,000? Well, I don't see why not. I mean, they do require some compromises. You're not going to get the best sort of motorway ride in a car like this. They are a little bit idiosyncratic in terms of the engineering, but there are hydrogas and hydroelastic specialists out there who'll be able to sort the displacers out for you. Please remember to grease your suspension, as Mr. Westby from Twin Cam has already shown in his channel. And watch for rust. Yes, I'll say it again, watch for rust. The other thing is, with cars with steel wheels like this one, is that it's almost impossible to find the right tyres for them on the original wheels. This car's been fitted with some mini wheels, which then have some tyres that look a bit sort of fuller. That the car looks a little bit better in my opinion like this. It's a bit under-wheeled possibly as standard, and then the hubcaps have been added on. But you'll see lots of Metros like this now, and it's just the way it is to keep them on the road. But there we are, viewers. Thank you for watching this episode of Sensible Secondhand Classics. Thank you again to Ben for allowing me to have a go in his car, which has been a lot of fun. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below, and we shall see you again soon.